What can you tell me about your space?
It's named MakeICT. It's in Wichita, Kansas. It started in 2012, so we've been around 6-ish years. Currently we're located on in a space on East Douglas, which is kind of the main north-south division in terms of roads in Wichita. Originally, we started off doing some activities before we had a space, and then we had a very small space in the back of an art house before we moved here. So,
All right, and what kind of membership size do you have?
we have somewhere close to 400. It's a little bit less, but as of a little bit ago, I think it's 391 or something like that. So.
All right, and how many paid employees do you have?
None. Everybody is a volunteer here. We do pay instructors for teaching classes because the education is one of the primary purposes of MakeICT.
All right, and how many different sections? You have like a jewelry, you have the printmaking, you have, how long have you had all of them? Did you start with all of them, or did you start with like a simple shop or two?
Well, in our original space, we didn't have room to divide anything up, so we just kind of had a small area, which is smaller than any of our current areas, and access to a classroom, and that was pretty much it originally. But when we moved here, most of the areas were kind of decided upon. We moved here just about 3 years ago, and so most of the areas were decided upon at that point. So we've got a ceramics area, metal shop, wood shop, electronics and rapid prototyping, print studio. Jewelry was the last one that was added, and that was added about a year ago. It's in by far the smallest space, which was used for storage before that. And we also have textiles and the fab lab.
Pottery.
Ceramics.
Ceramics.
Yeah, the first one I mentioned, I'm pretty sure, because I was going from the back to the front. So.
Do you have a tiered system of membership, or is everybody just granted access the same as everybody else?
Now, we only have one membership level, and that's at $25 a month. We do, for people who have access to the space, which we do grant for 24/7 after they've completed a process to gain that access. They can bring in guests as well. But the membership is flat, it's just the one level.
All right, and classes, are they free to members, or discounted to members, or are they solely for members and the public can't access them? How does that work?
The public has access to almost all, if not all. There may have been a couple of classes that were for specific groups, but it's not a common thing. Members do get discounted access to the classes. Some of our classes are free for members, like the safety classes. Others will just have material fee for what material there is or not. And then others will be more paid for the instructors. So.
All right, and how often do you hold classes? Do you have a schedule? Do classes repeat regularly at an interval, or?
It kind of depends on what they are. The safety classes and everything are definitely every month or so. Well, less than a month. Some of them, like the lasers, tend to be every 3 weeks or more often, depending on. And then there are some classes that do repeat. Some of them are monthly, some of them are every couple of months, and it just kind of varies depending on who the instructor is.
All right. And You have a gallery up front.
Mhm.
Are members able to sell things out of the location?
Yes, for the gallery shows, we do allow people to sell out of that or put pieces just on display.
All right. And do you have any tips or advice you can offer for other spaces from things you've learned over the years of this space? Any hurdles you encountered that the solutions to could benefit others?
Lots of them. I'm just not thinking of them immediately. One of the things that we've tried to do is make sure that everything is as open as possible. One of the things that we do is we don't have, like, some spaces do this, which is where you have certain people who are the only ones who operate like the CNC equipment and everything. We've gone through and everybody operates the laser, which sometimes means that people mess up on the laser, but it happens. But what that does is everyone gets that knowledge and that spreads it much further around as compared to a couple of people being the only ones who can operate things like that. I mean, we've pretty much followed the same thing on the CNC plasma cutter that we built. Some of them are a little bit more complicated, some of them are less complicated. You know, it just kind of depends.
All right. And as I go around to maker spaces, I usually ask them a couple questions and pass them on as we go. One of them is, as I go to other spaces and learn things from other spaces, what kinds of things are you most interested in learning from other spaces?
I've actually gone around to a number of spaces myself, and one of the things that I have always found very interesting about that is just the differences that there are in kind of the different cultures. I mean, there seems to be a very different culture depending on if you're all volunteer or you have paid staff, or if it's a commercial or non-commercial, and also depending on what kind of the goal is. There's a makerspace that I've gone to that has kind of it's non-profit, but it has kind of a incubator type. So each of these has their own advantages. For example, there are a lot of people using that one that I call kind of an incubator space to run businesses out of. There are others which are more art focused. One of the things that I've tried to make sure that we do here after coming back from another space is make sure that in Wichita there's a Final Friday. Some other cities have it First Friday or whatever, where you have a lot of people going around to various galleries and art places. And so we've tried to make sure that we have something going on in the gallery and people around each of those nights. And that was actually picked up from Lawrence Creates. So it's kind of various places can learn things from each other just by visiting and kind of looking at it. So I would actually say, in terms of a thing that other spaces can learn, is just have a couple people go visit another space. You know, I'm hoping to do this here again this year, but last year visited a number of those spaces, and I'm hoping to again this year, and hoping to have kind of a back and forth between them. And in fact, we're hoping to kind of start kind of an organization of the spaces, and not necessarily even spaces, but maker groups as well, because there are some groups of makers that don't have a space or anything. There's one that's forming that reminds me in Newton, which is a city half an hour-ish north of Wichita, where there's a lot of crossover, and it reminds me a lot of the early MakeICT that's happening in Make Harvey. So just talking to people who have been there for a while is a good thing as well. And just kind of seeing what they've done, what was successful. And I mean, I've also talked to people from very much out of the area, because we're in Kansas here, and there are things that just, I think, are very much cultural differences in terms of how much people are willing to pay, for example. We're doing pretty well, and I think we've gained a lot of members who have contributed a lot to us by having it at the $25 a month. If we'd gone higher, we would, get more dues, but I think we would lose a lot of the people who are willing to volunteer a lot of their time if they were paying more for it. So, I mean, that's something where, like, downtown San Francisco, you may need to have, 10,000 members to make that affordable, whereas we're, lucky enough that we can do that for 25 here. But I do think it is something that is culturally what has allowed us to maintain our all-volunteerness, as opposed to having to pay people to do things, where everybody is contributing to it and nobody's feeling like, well, don't mean to pick on Tech Shop, but there were some people who were talking about Tech Shop and everything, and they were talking about the difference in feeling of when you're paying $100+ as feeling like a customer as opposed to a member, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a different feel.
All right, one of the other aspects that some people have asked about is they kind of want to know what different spaces are doing to connect with the outside community. People not necessarily members of the maker movement or maker space, but still, in what way do maker spaces benefit the communities around them? And
in some ways, there's a lot of different answers to that question. One of the things that's very useful, I think, is Wichita has a lot of manufacturing still. We've got a bunch of aircraft manufacturing and things like that. So there are a lot of people who have experience from there. But if you're not in that very specific part of the economy, you're generally not going to get any experience with various things like CNC machines and things like that. And the vast majority of our members aren't. We've got don't get me wrong, we've got a ton of people who are in the aircraft industry, or who have been, but access to those things is generally only if your job has it, which is something, or you're a hobbyist who pays, a bunch of money to buy, or already has the knowledge to make your own. So it gives an exposure for a lot more people to things. Like our laser cutter uses laser cut and just takes SVGs, or can take, just images, and makes it fairly simple for people to use. And so it's a really popular tool because it's got a fairly low barrier to entry. Whereas, as I mentioned before, having to either build your own CNC or have it as part of your job, you're going to have issues getting access to a lot of tools if you don't have a makerspace around. And even if you're joining for a short period of time, like a month or two to complete a project, that's a resource that's not present if you don't have a makerspace. It's also, in terms of outreach and things like that, a lot of, especially a couple years ago, well, several years ago at this point, people hadn't seen like a 3D printer when we were starting out and doing some initial outreach to various places and things like that. So we've had like Girl Scouts in here, Pinewood Derby, making in the wood shop, and various other things which get people in here occasionally with classes. We also do things like Maker Fair, which is a really, really cool thing, because not only do you get to see all of the Makerspaces makers, but you get to see all of the area groups that fall under that wide maker umbrella. So we've had people doing things for kids like felting and things like that, which you're not going to encounter all that much unless you're in a specific group for that, or if you're in a maker group which encompasses that. There's, you know, you get to see things that you normally wouldn't. One of the favorite things that I have seen made here is a present for one of our members' daughter. So it's a combination of a wooden base, LEDs into a metal leaf, and jars. That was just kind of a fusion of all sorts of different areas and knowledge that could be obtained, and it was beautiful. I really need to ask him for a picture of it because it's really beautiful. So, and I don't think his daughter is going to give it up for anything but a picture. So, because I mean, he put a lot of effort into that, and that just really made it beautiful. And yeah, but the fusion of projects is one of the things that I love about it, because you can take something that's 3D printed, work with electronics, put it onto something that's, you know, made in a metal shop, and you get something that's you couldn't do without all of those combinations. So it's kind of the fusion of having everything together as opposed to apart is also a very good thing, in my opinion.
All right, so is there anything else about your space you'd like to mention as we come to the end of this?
I mean, we have lucked out in that we have a lot of volunteers who are willing to give their time. We've got kind of a group of, I'd say, at least 20 people, actually more than that, who all will come in and help people. A lot of times, sometimes it's a little bit frustrating because you'll have everyone helping each other, which sometimes means that when you come in the door, someone will immediately go, "Hey, you're Hugh, can you help me with this?" And sometimes you go, "No, I want to work on my project." But usually, you know, it's something that most all the people will do and say, "Yeah, I'll help you." One of our rules, the way I prefer to phrase it is, if you're not comfortable using something, ask somebody. Because around here, we've got a whole bunch of volunteers who spend their free time here because we've got a great group of people. I mean, and if they can't tell you how to do something, they can probably say, "I don't know how to do it, but this guy does. He might be able to help you." And it's a very, and from what I can tell, we've been lucky, because when I've gone to other spaces and talked to them, they've said that they don't have that same sort of culture in their area, so we've kind of lucked into that. I mean, I hope other places do, but that's what I've been told, so.
All right, well, thank you. And I think that should be good.